For as much Japanese mythology, Hindu and Buddhist theology and concepts inspired the story of Jujutsu Kaisen and its characters, no one or nothing truly comes close to Ryomen Sukuna, whether that be in strength, the embodiment of the themes explored within the narrative, or even the lore and depth associated with his character. From his name, design, mythology, and possible inspirations from myths, legends, video games, modern pop culture, and so much more. Ryomen Sukuna is a monster that in-world characters fail to understand, and so do the majority of us, as it seems. So let's dissect him. To call this video a deep dive would be an understatement. We are going deeper than even that. No stone is going to be left unchecked, no story uncovered, and no aspect unexplored. So get comfy with a cup of tea and maybe have others ready to be reloaded. Just before we jump in, however, a disclaimer for those with hearts that might not feel comfortable with things that will be discussed here. Unpleasant things like cultist experimentations, mummification, graphic body horror, real sorcery and curses, cannibalism, death and rebirth, and depictions of hellish deities and monsters and such. Yeah, it is that type of video. Let us start with the multiple inspirations behind the character. Some of these are confirmed by the author, while others are just observations that have too much similarities with the specific lore of Jujutsu Kaisen. Sukuna in real life is a historical figure mentioned in the Nihon Shoki. He is said to have lived in the 65th year of Emperor Nintoko's rule in Hida, which is modern-day Gifu Prefecture. He had 2 faces, 2 sets of legs, and 2 sets of arms. He carried 2 swords and a bow and arrow. He killed a lot of people and ended up being slain by a man called Takefurukuma. However, Sukuna is not actually considered evil in Hida. According to an article by the Japanese Wiki Corpus, while he is described as some monster or a villain in the Nihon Shoki, an enemy of the emperor, people in Mino and Hida provinces treated him as a hero and a benefactor. It's said in folklore that he was the founder of multiple temples. He introduced Buddhism to the area and is very well respected and revered in those provinces, even until now. Following this clear contradiction, multiple other mentions either describe him as an evil entity that wreaked havoc until he was defeated, while others say he was a great ruler who was respected by and protected his people when they were invaded by the Yamato and he was killed by Take. It appears that history was played with here by the victors as always, painting him as a bad man because he resisted the emperor, while existing cultures and monuments depict him as otherwise, as a hero. This seems to be a story fabricated to justify their conquest to make them look good. While Jujutsu Kaisen is set in modern-day Japan with a realistic reflection of our own world, same history, technology, and basically a one-to-one reflection of it, from the artistic choice to have basically every background area be an actual real one that exists in Japan, the countless pop culture references and other things like that, it would not be a stretch to just take the facts we just went over as canonical, since the author, KyeZzzz himself, has said that what he knows about Sukuna comes from this specific book, the Nihongi or Nihon Shoki. After all, Sukuna in Jujutsu Kaisen was killed 1000 years ago. He battled against the ruling Fujiwara clan and is generally known as a bad evil entity that is not a curse nor a human, but a twisted being beyond both. However, there is another story that KyeZzzz has mentioned as an inspiration behind Ryomen Sukuna, one that ties him with the one we just talked about and connects more to Jujutsu Kaisen. A construction worker found a wooden box when he was at work. demolishing an old temple in Iwate Prefecture. He asked a temple priest about the box, and the priest replied, "Never open that." But his colleagues opened the box without asking. Inside, they found a mummy with 2 faces, 4 arms, and 4 legs. After that, the priest came to take it back and said, "Too bad, you cannot live a long life." After he told them, one of the workers died from a heart attack, one was housed at a mental disease hospital, and the other 3 collapsed with a high fever. The narrator himself got heavily injured because he got his instep penetrated by an iron nail, and he was left wondering what that box was, and what in the world was that horrifying mummy inside of it. This is a story published on a Japanese social media site in 2005, written by this worker who was confused about what happened in that incident. His curiosity and confusion led him to persist in search for some answers. He sought out the son of the priest that was summoned to the construction site. Apparently, the son was also educated in the Buddhist ways, but decided to give this up and pursue a career in real estate instead. It was apparently the son's responsibility to send the box to Kyoto, but it never ended up there. They were able to meet, and the son told the story of how Ryomen Sukuna ended up in that box in the first place. According to him, in the 19th century, a man called Mononobe Tengoku bought conjoined twins at a circus. This may explain why the body had 2 heads, 4 arms, and 4 legs. Mononobe Tengoku was the leader of a heretic sect and had some weird tendencies. He locked up the conjoined twins in a room full of other people with deformities. It was said that the conjoined twins reminded Tengoku of an ashura, or a power-hungry deity, which is why he wanted them to survive, thus leading him to stab all the other people in the room, leaving them there with nothing to eat but each other. Tengoku only opened the room when there was 1 survivor left, and lo and behold, it was the conjoined twins. As a prize for their survival, Tengoku then proceeded to starve and mummify them so that they wouldn't decompose. As mentioned earlier, he was a peculiar man. The sect named the mummified twins as Ryomen Sukuna, who the twins reminded them of. The Sukuna we were just discussing earlier. Their statue-like remains were then wrapped up and became a symbol for their sect. Legend has it that they took the mummified twins with them wherever they went, and wherever they went, disasters like deadly earthquakes always followed. This may be what led Akutami to describe Sukuna as a walking calamity. After the last devastating earthquake, Tengoku slashed his own throat, killing himself. Nobody knows why, and he wrote under the statue, using his own blood, that Japan shall perish. This act is believed to represent the continuation of the curse. In the first chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, we hear about an incident linked to curses related to some construction work that was done in the school area. Coincidentally, Sukuna's finger lays there, mummified and wrapped. It gets picked up by people who should not have opened its box, and they suffer for it. We can clearly see what inspired the inciting incident of Jujutsu Kaisen. More things we can take away from the story are Tengoku's involvement in the whole thing, which I don't know about you, but his name sounds a lot like Kenjaku. A peculiar man who has his own weird tendencies. The battle for survival he created with the people with deformities is basically the culling game, where one person shall emerge victorious. It is also reminiscent of Kodoku, a Chinese sorcery practice where you put multiple poisonous insects inside a jar and let them kill each other until only one is left alive, and use that final product to curse someone, something I discussed to length in previous videos. We know Kenjaku was behind Yuji's birth and Sukuna's resurrection. He is the Tengoku of Jujutsu Kaisen, the priest's son who was a monk but chose to pursue a career in real estate. Reminds me of Kento Nanami, because just as how the priest's son played the role of a guide and informer to the worker, Nanami did the same in the early days of Jujutsu Kaisen because of his association to Yuji and therefore Sukuna. I just find that how he was educated in the Buddhist ways and left to pursue a career in real estate and then came back to still take care of the box sounds a lot like Nanami's journey, but it might be a stretch. But we can at least see that this creepypasta that was popular in Japan almost 20 years ago sparked something in Gege's mind and led him to play with the concept of the historical Sukuna, mixing both of them to come up with his own version, and the rest was history. However, there are plenty of other inspirations that have fueled the concept of the character that is Sukuna and enriched his lore to paint a better picture of who or what he really is. Let's go over those and after that proceed to analyze the character, from the first panel he appears in until the last one, all while using the inspirations and secrets we uncover to get a better picture, narratively, thematically, technically, and even spiritually. The Razetsu are demon spirits that reside in the heavenly realm. They have the power to influence and seduce humans and then eat them, which sounds a lot like what Sukuna did to Angel. But they are also believed to be wardens under the Lord of Hell, Enma himself, who, when breaking down Sukuna's hand signs, we get clear references to. His hand sign is Enma-ten, which is the name of the King of Hell. This originated from Yama, the King of the Dead Land, who was originally a human before he died and turned into the King of Hell. According to various mythologies, Yama was the first mortal to die and became the ruler of all of those who followed. He died and became the King of Hell, just like Sukuna died and became the King of Curses. Enma is derived from the Indian Yama, so they are one and the same. Yet in Indian mythology, Yama and the much more known Shiva are considered two sides of the same entity. Shiva comes in many forms in Buddhism, one of which is called Daijizaitan, and it's a demon spirit that is often depicted with a three-pronged spear in his right hand and a bowl of blood in his left. And believe it or not even this, 1 out of 8 forms that Shiva comes in, he has multiple forms within that too. It can get complicated, but to keep it simple and to focus on what is important is that one of these forms depicts him with 2 arms that are dark red. He is always seated on a black buffalo, bringing to mind the skulls that are in Sukuna's domain, which are exactly buffalo skulls, and with the image of him being seated on top of the shrine, which is his default residence. Also, the fact that he summons a whole black ox using Megami's technique. These are insanely accurate similarities, too good to be shoved as some coincidences. He is always accompanied with his consort, and her name is Uma, which just sounds like Uraume, and the names share meanings. So, a cannibalistic spirit that was a human who died and became the king of the damned, has multiple forms, one of which is this, and has a loyal consort called Uma. Sukuna is Enma/Yama/Shiva/Daijizaitan, who are all somehow the same being. We get that, but it gets even crazier when we talk about Daijizaitan's son, whose name is Sukanda. Before we talk about Sukanda, though, let's break down Sukuna's domain's name for some context that we need. malevolent shrine, or in Japanese, Fukuma Mizushi. Fukuma most likely means Fukuma Den, which means a palace where a demon lurks. The domain reflects Sukuna's innate world, where he lurks for most of the series, so that's clear. Mizushi, however, can have multiple meanings, yet all of them hit home when it comes to Ryomen Sukuna. It means the tools to enshrine Buddha statues. It may also come from Mizushi Dokoro, which is a place in the temple used to prepare meals as offering. Lastly, when looking at the word itself separately, we get Mi, which means honored. That is one of Sukuna's descriptions. And Zushi, which means kitchen, bringing us back to the kitchen cooking symbolism, which is all over Sukuna. The real myth of Sukuna himself mentions him having a giant pot which he takes with him to war and cooks in. His technique is linked to sushi, skinning and chopping knives, and he cuts things and burns them with fire. Even his speech in Japanese is filled with analogies about cooking and preparing meals. Like when he sliced the finger-bearer curse, the Japanese wording in his speech refers to a specific way fish is cut. He even calls Gojo a nameless fish that flops around, and he will start by peeling those scales, aka removing his infinity. Malevolent kitchen is very real. And it's not just these instances where fish is used as symbolism. All of the series is filled with this, especially in the openings of the anime. They are used to visually represent characters like Yuji, Geto and Gojo, Junpei and Riko. Those two have even more fish-related things going on. I mean, we all know Riko died and came back as Dagon. This is the proof. Fish aside, back to Sukanda, and shout out to user Jisatsu no Jujutsu, whose writing in the subreddit Jujutsushi was the first time I found about Idaten or Sukanda, who is the, believe it or not, deity of the kitchen. He is known as a very fast runner and is always linked to problems and chaos, where it's said, wherever there is trouble, he is found. He has no physical depictions that I could find, but since Sukanda is Daiji Zaiten's son, we can agree that both of them seem to have inspired Sukuna's visual design, along with the cooking theme that accompanies his curse technique, and countless other bits of symbolism. Let us take a break from Hindu and Buddhist mythology and go back in time to Imperial Japan, where we find a bunch of possible inspirations for Sukuna. Starting with a tale about a man called Abe no Seimei, who was an onmyoji, which is basically a court sorcerer. Abe no Seimei is actually quite popular in Japanese literature, and many manga have adapted him in some form or another. See, Abe no Seimei was betrayed by his wife, whose name is Rika. She had an affair with his rival Ashiya Doman, who manipulated her into letting her open Seimei's box for him. The golden box was like a treasure where Seimei kept two very important and powerful books. He kept that box in another larger wooden box. These books inside were passed down to Seimei from a scholar, and it is believed that these texts contained all the techniques and secrets of onmyodo, which is jujutsu or sorcery. Now this is very familiar. Geto wanted to take Rika away from Yuta because of her powers and importance. That alone is quite a similar parallel. But we saw Rika being used as a literal storage that Yuta uses. Aside from the boundless curse energy and the technique, Rika is a treasure of Jujutsu that Geto attempted to steal. The visual of a box being opened and revealing power was something we see in one of Akutami's earlier standalone one-shots, number 9, where the protagonist uses the word Fuga to retrieve stored weapons like Yuta does. The same word, Fuga, is what Sukuna uses to unleash his most destructive ability, Kamina, the fire arrow. The visual for the manga, for what is open, is a black box. Megami's technique is also a bunch of shikigami he stores in the shadow, and Sukuna gains that. Sukuna's domain name also refers to a miniature box where sutras are stored. And if you need more convincing that this tale is not just some coincidence for some reason, then after Doman kills Seimei and gets his wife Rika to open the box for him, he buried the head of Seimei under a bridge called Gojo. In Kyoto, this Gojo bridge from the tale still exists to this day, and it crosses the Kamo River. By the way, it is the same bridge where Beikei fought Ushiwakamaru for the first time, another popular Japanese story that is depicted in a lot of things as well. A lot of the variations of the story say that Seimei's wife, Rika, was possessed and she had spiritual powers and could see demons. Very befitting of a queen of curses. Now back to topic, because there's still much more. Abe no Seimei is also known as Abe no Sukune Seimei. Yeah, it gets deeper. Sukune here is actually a title that some people are called by, and you might know of Sugawara no Michizane, a historical character that was not only mentioned in the manga. Gojo says that the Gojo clan are descendants of this figure, and even Yuta is also descendant from him, making Gojo and Yuta distant relatives. Well, this real historical figure that existed and that was called Sugawara no Michizane was descended from a famous Sukune, someone who had that title. We'll be back to Sugawara no Michizane and Sukuna later. But this title, Sukune, is mostly associated with the Mononobe clan, which was not mentioned in Jujutsu Kaisen like many of the other clans. But if you remember the creepy 2-chan story we covered earlier, well, the man who experimented through mummification and a battle royale of deformed people was called Mononobe Tengoku. The names Mononobe and Sukuna connect through etymology, mythology, and a random story posted in 2005. Even the 10 shadows, which Megami's 10 shadows are based on, and his Yura Yura chant he uses to summon Maharaga, are things associated with Mononobe in real life. And in the story, they are associated with Sukuna as well. Truly fascinating finds. But let's go back to Sugawara no Michizane for a second. Because if Shiva is Sukuna the demon after he died, then Sugawara no Michizane is Sukuna as a human before death. According to legend, Sugawara no Michizane was a gifted student who composed many poems dedicated to his favorite plum tree. He was a respected politician who got into a conflict with the Fujiwara clan, who exiled him. When he died, his body was carried by an ox that stopped next to a Buddhist monastery. There, he was buried by his follower, Omasuke no Yasuyuki. Yes, you heard that right, on top of an ox and a loyal follower with a name that sounds like Ryomen. Now, there is a secret I've been keeping from you whenever I mentioned Umasuke, or Ryomen. Sugawara loved plum trees a lot and wrote poetry about a specific one that is his favorite. A plum tree in Japanese is called Ume, and Ryomen, Sukuna's only loyal follower, has a bowl haircut that resembles a plum fruit, specifically the red stroke on hair in the middle. In the legend of Sugawara, it is said that his favorite plum tree inside the shrine flew from Kyoto to be reunited with him. It's said that this is always the first plum tree to bloom in Japan. Sounds like Ryomen, who was the first sorcerer to be reincarnated, and she came all the way here to be reunited with Sukuna. Soon after Sugawara died, 5 members of the Fujiwara clan, who were the royals that exiled him, died, one from a lightning strike that struck the castle. People deified Michizane and called him Tenjin and said he became a vengeful spirit. When disasters struck, The Fujiwara clan aimed to appease his angry spirit as penance, and the legend of Tenjin was born. Now, like I said earlier, the Fujiwara clan were mentioned in Jujutsu Kaisen, and we know that Sukuna was their enemy. As the legend tells us that 5 of them died, Jujutsu Kaisen tells us that the 5 Void generals that served them were defeated by Sukuna in the past. The shrine that Sugawara no Michizane was buried in looks very familiar. Another small detail is the fact that an ox statue was made next to the shrine. Sukuna says he is the fallen. As much as people rushed to call him some type of fallen angel, I think the title holds more significance in relation to Sugawara no Michizane, who was exiled and fell from grace at the imperial court and became an enemy of the powerful rulers, also reminiscent of the real legend of Ryomen Sukuna, who fell on the wrong side of the ruling clan and was made to look and remembered as a villain when he was not. Going off of Sukuna's demeanor, skills, and especially way of speech, which is almost poetic and exudes nobility, at least from the Japanese point of view, we can guess that he was not just some random peasant who most likely was a fisher or a farmer. Sukuna fell from a high rank. He was educated and belonged to the court. His mannerisms and character traits are that of someone from high status, commandeering and in control all the time, elegant and commands respect. He studied the mind and the soul and knows culture and history, on top of his knowledge of sorcery, which alone would make him a scholar. Yorozu, a lady of high status, would not be interested in someone with low status. He knows about the tradition of haiku and attended festivals and knew how to play the games of politics and rival the rulers. Sukuna's characteristics are those of an educated, high-ranked man, not just some crazy maniac who only seeks destruction for destruction's sake. While he is also that, some have theorized that he would be related to Sugawara no Michizane, but I lean towards Sukuna actually being Sugawara no Michizane based on all of this, to be honest, which makes him Gojo's great-great-great-great-grandfather, not just metaphorically. But there is not much canon material to go off of that. There's a theory which makes it more fun. From now though, let us transition from life to death and talk about Shiva, Sukuna's most major inspiration, and other parallels we can find in the story. Shout out to user Rootin Tootin Cowboy, who made a brilliant post on Reddit explaining this next discovery. The Trimurti are the 3 principal deities of Hinduism, and each of them corresponds nicely with the main important character in Jujutsu Kaisen. Kenjaku fits the role of the creator, Brahma, who has multiple faces, possesses great intellect, and has 10 sons born of the mind. That is perfect. Tengen resembles the preserver, Vishnu, for that is what Tengen's role is in the world of Jujutsu. A preserver, add to that Vishnu possessing immortality and an affiliation to Buddhism, succeeding as the 10th star. Sukuna, like I have been saying, is clearly Shiva, the destroyer. In addition to this trio, Yuji resembles one of Brahma's sons, whose name is Kratu Rishi, who was said to have reincarnated by the boon of Lord Shiva, like Yuji's twisted birth by the hands of Kenjaku, using the remains of Sukuna's dead twin brother. There are also more specific similarities that these characters share with these avatars. Brahma has multiple faces and is depicted most of the time with 4 specific ones, and 4 is exactly the number of bodies that Kenjaku has been in from what we got to see. By his own words and simple logic, he has been through multiple ones, yet we only get to see 4 of them. A sorcerer from the Edo period, around 400 years ago when he met Kashimo. Noritoshi Kamo from roughly 150 years ago. Kaori Itadori from around 17 years ago. And finally Suguru Geto, who he transplanted his brain into 1 year ago. Brahma has 10 sons that are born from the mind, created by design, who are said to be the progenitors of man, considering Kenjaku's 9 death paintings and Yuji being the 10th son, who he has hopes for as progenitors of the new curse-infused man of tomorrow. As the creator, Kenjaku does not really destroy things or kill people. He introduces new things and lets them grow and replace others. Funnily enough, Kenjaku has never killed anyone on screen in the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen. We know of at least 3 people he killed, but that was off-screen, those being a young 6 Eyes user and a star plasma vessel back in the day, and Noritoshi Kamo's father. He did not kill Yuki, she technically killed herself. It's just very ironic that this guy has not killed anyone in the whole manga. The founder of Jujutsu sorcery, the star and the immortal preserver, Tengen is clearly Vishnu, the deity of time. Vishnu is one of the most followed in Hinduism, and Tengen is about the only character that has a following in Jujutsu Kaisen, namely the Time Vessel Association, who, just by looking at their flag, we can see 10 stars. And this alone is a huge piece of insight, since Vishnu is said to have reincarnated 23 times, 9 of which he got popular enough to be followed, and there is a prophecy that the 10th and final incarnation of Vishnu will end the Kali Yuga, which is one of the 4 periods of the endless cycle of existence. Endless cycles is what Jujutsu and sorcery is all about. That final reincarnation, which for Tengen did not happen because of Toji, which was ultimately the first major event that led to everything that happens in this series, and fate goes in the wrong way. Something to be noted in addition to all the star symbolism and association with Tengen and Vishnu is the existence of Yuki Tsukumo, who was at one point a star plasma vessel herself, for Tengen to reincarnate in and extend her immortality. Yuki's technique is called Star Rage. Perhaps that holds an underlying meaning hinting at Yuki's disagreement with Tengen's philosophy, and essentially her rejection of her part of fate and identity. And lastly is Shiva the Destroyer, aka Ryomen Sukuna, the walking disaster, the ultimate danger to the balance of the cycle, the undisputed king of curses, who shares similarities both in form and in ability to the Hindu deity Shiva and his other forms, and cross-cultural assimilation, mainly that of Enma and Dissecting in Buddhism, and one that I just recently discovered and went digging into, which is Rudra, who may have non-Vedic origins. All of these guys are Shiva anyways, and Shiva is Sukuna. Another bit of info I really liked is that Devi, the supreme deity, is regarded as the energy and creative power, and she is the equal complementary partner of Shiva, which reminded me of Yorozu, simply because of the creative energy and partnership parts. Shiva also has a third eye that has the ability to burn anyone or anything in front of him and turn them to ashes. And lastly, we visit the world of video games for more possible insights, starting off with the resemblance between Sukuna's design in Yuji's body and Ashura from Ashura's Wrath. Ashura is also a fallen himself, aside from both of them fulfilling the role of some type of Ashura who has multiple hands in their worlds. But the main dish here is Undertale, where we have a character called Sans, who looks very familiar. He is so powerful and cannot be touched in battle. He dies by getting cut off guard and slashed in the middle into 2 pieces. The person that killed him is you, the protagonist, who has 2 souls in one body, Kara and Frisk, just like Yuji and Sukuna. The max level in Undertale is level 20, but when you fight Sans, you are at level 19, just like Sukuna fought Gojo when he had 19 fingers from a total of 20. Also, level here stands for love instead of level. Yuji absorbs his remaining 6 brothers from these little containers before fighting Sukuna. Frisk also gets 6 souls to aid him in the final battle. Tengen and Kenjaku find similarities in King Ascor and Evil Elphys, who is a shady scientist who is after merging souls and moving humanity to the other side. Very familiar indeed. Itadori Wasuke lays on his hospital bed. His time has come and the only person who cares about him, his only family, is his grandson Yuji, who runs to him after school with flowers in hand every day. Wasuke pushes Yuji away, tells him to go to his club activities, stop wasting time with him, make friends and comrades, all to not end up like him, alone on his deathbed.
強いから人を助けろ。手の届く範囲でいい。救えるやつは救っとけ。迷ってもいい。感謝されなくても気にするな。とにかく一人でも多く助けてやれ。お前は大勢に囲まれて死ね。俺みたいになるなよ。
Wasuke passes away and Yuji has no one left. He meets Fushiguro, who asks about Sukuna's finger, and they go to rescue Yuji's mates. Yuji remembers his grandfather's words and rushes in to help, do whatever he could, fight bravely and protect those he can, for that is the value he sees in life and the price he is willing to pay. A price too expensive, if only he knew. These are Sukuna's first words upon revival. He forces himself into an era that isn't his, a body that isn't his, and he declares nothing but sheer malice for destruction and chaos, a complete disregard to any and all life. Immediately, the exact opposite of Yuji, and the night Sukuna was reborn is the very night his brother passes away. For Jujutsu Kaisen teaches us that twins cannot coexist properly in the world of cursed energy. They weaken each other, and unless one disappears, the other cannot be fully realized. Sukuna devoured his twin in their womb, and 1,000 years later, fate still refuses to let them coexist at the same time ever again. For that was Sukuna's sin, a sin he escapes instead of accepting. And already, within seconds, we get the major theme of his character. Seeing no inherent value in the lives of others, a complete disregard to the weak, and a curse he will live with till eternity. We also get a good read on and foreshadowing for Sukuna's mindset and perceptiveness when he gets into a small fight with Gojo, who infinitely overpowers him at this point of the story. Sukuna, in the little time he gets, analyzes this weird power he interacts with and deducts what it possibly could be and how it works. But before he could try anything, Yuji swaps back and Sukuna is contained for now. Yuji's body is quite unique and for some reason or another holds Sukuna of all people. Yuji accepts his role to contain Sukuna until he fully absorbs all 20 fingers and then is executed, a path he chooses instead of giving up his life. For now, he asks Gojo for the finger he has and absorbs it, declaring his acceptance of his role and fate. The moment is tense. Gojo is vigilant and wary. Sukuna's strength is overwhelming, but Yuji can still hold him in. A very comforting conclusion indeed. On their way to the principal, who will personally evaluate Yuji before acceptance, Sukuna comments that a hierarchy not based on strength is pointless. If Gojo was the strongest, how come is he not the supreme leader and authority? Gojo tells Yuji about the tale of Ryomen Sukuna, who was once a human at one point, but ascended beyond that through curses. It took the strongest of their time and barely won against him, sealing away his fingers, in which he was able to transfer his power through understanding souls and the phenomena of death. A deed so unprecedented only Sukuna can accomplish. He only needs to understand something once to be able to overcome it, conquer it. Consider that foreshadowing. Sukuna promises he will kill Gojo when he takes control of Yuji's body. As early as episode 2, he tells him his fate. Yuji asks whether Gojo can win in case they fought, since he so flamboyantly and arrogantly calls himself the strongest. And Gojo answers, confronted by Yaga, Yuji's flimsy beliefs are challenged. His moral code is tested, beaten around and harshly questioned. He finally verbalizes his intention and path. He says containing Sukuna is something only he can do, so he will do it. Any damage he causes, if he doesn't, will fall on his back. So he will choose his own death and maybe, just maybe, help others meet theirs properly. But when poor, naive Yuji meets death and asks Sukuna to help them against the finger bearer, Sukuna responds with honesty, telling him exactly what he will do if he dares swap with him. First, he's going to kill Fushiguro, and then play around with Nobara before killing her too, something Yuji will definitely not allow to happen. So Yuji tells Megumi to rescue Nobara and go as far as they can. He will then release Sukuna and force him to deal with the curse, but not before being beaten around, gets broken bones, a cut arm, and blasted fingers. Yuji cries and regrets everything. So naive, he is afraid and feels stupid. Guiding others to a proper death, what a joke. However, it is then that he tastes cursed energy. These negative emotions he's experiencing are the fuel that he can use as power. So he gathers all of that fuel, all of that regret, pain and fear, and fights back. It does nothing, but he gets little time to hear the howl and unleash Sukuna. Another decision he will come to regret very soon. Sukuna is released, and what that means quickly becomes clear. He introduces us to the pinnacle of the world of sorcery, domain expansions, which then gets formally explained by Gojo in his clash with Jogoats. The epitome of skill is shown to us early on by the two strongest beings, which just makes sense. Sukuna tortures the finger bearer. He absolutely enjoys playing with his food before devouring it. He encourages the curse to try harder. He laughs at its weakness. With only 3 out of 20 fingers, Sukuna's strength becomes apparent compared to a standard special grade cursed spirit, a spirit that puts the fear of God in Megumi and Yuji. That very curse was rendered a joke next to Sukuna, who finally cuts it to pieces and lets Yuji take control back, because there's nothing to do about it. Yuji is still the controller of the body, except he is not responding. The next fun thing for Sukuna to do is fight the only sorcerer nearby. He takes Yuji's heart out, sealing his fate if he attempts to take the body back after gaining consciousness. Sukuna can survive without the heart, Yuji cannot. As we've seen already, he taunts and beats his opponent, going easy at first and even encouraging him to be creative and resourceful. Megumi stands no chance, as one of his strongest summon is killed in front of him like it's nothing. He gets kicked and punched in the air like a rag doll, visceral bloodlust and violence. Sukuna is just a force of pure chaos whenever he is out. But he does not kill Megumi yet, because he realized something about his technique. Megumi uses the shadow as a medium to summon the Shikigami. Unlike the basic ones, this one was special. He asks why he ran away back then, hinting at possessing the ability to beat the finger bearer, a thought Megumi does not share. After gathering his resolve, establishing his ideals, Megumi, for the second time since meeting Sukuna, holds his hands up for the hand sign that will summon guaranteed death. A summon that will also kill Sukuna at this current point. And that is when Sukuna's smile widens. The anticipation of whatever this is something he looks forward to. So he challenges Megumi. But just before that, Yuji starts to come back and take control of the body. He effectively saves Megumi and kills himself. But before that, Megumi explains his resolve and how he sees things. A simple clarification over a scuffle they had earlier that day. Yuji smiles and tells Megumi he is smart, being able to think thoroughly about something he only has surface level understanding of. This whole death and life stuff. He leaves Megumi with his dying words and his life fades away. The binding vow is simple. Sukuna will heal Yuji and bring him back to life, in exchange for taking control for 1 minute if he says the word "enchain," and Yuji will forget about this vow. A vow is sacred in the eyes of Jujutsu, for cursed energy itself will punish you greatly if you break it. Yuji hesitates, but agrees eventually, with the condition that Sukuna will not hurt anyone when he takes control, but he challenges Sukuna to a fight to settle the deal. At this time, we get introduced to Kenjaku, who disguises himself as Suguru Geto, planning to aid disaster-cursed spirits in overthrowing humanity and dominating the world of the living. He suggests 2 factors in order for them to win: seal Gojo away and add Sukuna to their side. Kenjaku knows that Sukuna has not died. In contrast to Jogo, he was the one who planted the finger in the juvenile detention center to test Sukuna's strength, and he for some reason knows too much. When Junpei is transfigured in front of him, helpless and clueless, Yuji asks Sukuna for help again. Heal him, do anything, I'm ready to pay the price this time. I will do anything. As if he didn't learn anything from the last time. Still naive. Pathetic, disgustingly weak and naive. Sukuna laughs to his heart's content. Ridiculed and with his friend dying in his arms, turned into an amalgamation of flesh and bone. Powerless, Yuji finally realizes something obvious. He has been treating Sukuna as a human this whole time and mistakenly assuming he would be understanding to some extent. These 2 are KyeZzz's, if only he knew earlier. Much like mistaking Mahito for a human because of his appearance, Yuji still looks for the good in someone, no matter how evil they are, and he pays the price again. It is then and there, where he's boiling with anger and hatred, that he experiences a new feeling he never felt before. Pure rage and intent to kill.
今まで俺の口から出た言葉は全て嘘だったんじゃないかと思えるくらい腹の底から出た本音殺してやる
Yuji is capable of hurting Mahito, one of the few that can do it. Since he is the one in control of swapping the souls that control his body, he's become aware of the contours of his soul. So his cursed energy-infused attacks can directly damage the shape of Mahito's soul. He unleashes his pent-up rage at Mahito, Sukuna, and more importantly, himself, weaponized by his naivety, and finally using cursed energy to its fullest extent. Yuji fights and fights. He throws himself at Mahito, even if it means hurting himself. For the first time in his life, he is aiming to kill someone. Although Mahito is much stronger than him at this point, he attempts to transfigure Yuji's body, forcibly giving control to Sukuna, and that was his mistake.
俺の魂に触れるか。一度は許す。二度はない。部をわきまえろ。知れ者が。
Yuji's rage continues, unleashing everything he has on Mahito. Nanami aids him and together they beat the soul out of him, but that pushes him to an unwanted territory. When closest to experiencing death, he evolves. He tastes true cursed energy and expands his domain. He does it skillfully in a way that isolates Yuji and traps Nanami. He does not want to touch Sukuna's soul ever again, for he knows what that would mean. But he gets unlucky. Yuji breaks into the domain and...
言ったはずだぞ。二度はないと。お前が死のうと、お前が死のうと、どうでもいい。奴以外は、心底どうでもいい。
Barely managing to escape alive, Mahito says Sukuna's cursed energy is overwhelmingly evil, so intense and scary. The king of curses is the king of all jujutsu. If Mahito was humanity's hatred made manifest, he is still a dot in the world of curses, a fly for Sukuna to swat away. He felt that malice and evil for himself, and even humanity's fear of humans felt fear for the first time. The honored one, living for nothing but his own pleasure, a complete disregard to all else. By his own words, Sukuna is not interested in anything aside from Megumi, and arguably he only revived Yuji after sensing something in Megumi earlier. The one person he is interested in is Megumi, whose biggest flaw is a normal level of level-mindedness and a lack of selfishness, which does not suit a sorcerer, something that was first noted by Sukuna and then by Gojo. When he finally overcomes it and overthinks what the two of them had told him, he stops trying to kill his opponents through suicide, and he achieves the highest level of Jujutsu. He maniacally laughs in the face of death like a true sorcerer. He fights to his heart's fullest like a true sorcerer. He embraces the challenge and overcomes it. A domain is an expression of the soul, and Megumi for the first time in his life expresses his own. Sukuna is watching through his finger, and he likes the progress. Whatever he is planning is going well. Megumi is finally on the route of true sorcery, a route that Sukuna will inevitably meet him on. This curse has killed and hurt multiple people. This very curse exists because the fingers were awakened after Sukuna was reborn, because Yuji ate the finger. So Yuji indirectly caused the death of people, and this clashes with his earlier disagreement with Megumi. When Megumi said he does not save people who might cause the death of others, Yuji asked why did he save him then, since Sukuna can cause that. While they found equal peace in that moment, it did not last. Megumi vouched for saving Yuji to Gojo, and Yuji ended up causing death for others. Megumi realizes this, but never blames Yuji. He talks to Nobara about it and tells her not to tell Yuji, knowing he will blame himself. But too late, Sukuna already told him. He taunts him and pushes it in his face. He makes sure to let the brat know he caused death. Yuji solemnly moves forward. He already learned about the true nature of curses. He's already started to learn about cursed energy properly. He is slightly stronger now. Same naive and flimsy moral code of operation, but at least the vessel of that code is stronger now to be able to carry it. Much like he grows as a strong vessel for Sukuna, he grows as a strong vessel for his philosophy, whenever that decides to bloom. Yuji loses to the much stronger Choso after a very tough and exhausting battle, doing everything he could and reaffirming his intentions through accepting death, if that means taking down his enemy in front of him. Seconds before dying, Sukuna looks down at his incompetence, and for the third time in the story so far, Sukuna is shown being serious.
くだらん。この程度の角に負けるとは。
First was when Yuji landed a punch on him in his innate world, and secondly was when Mahito dared to touch his soul. Sukuna does not bat an eye to disrespect, so what about this moment? This is a perfect time to talk about Sukuna's relationship with Yuji, or at least how he sees it. He despises the kid and sees no value in him. Sure, he sees no value in anyone else unless they are strong enough to entertain him or challenge him. But why torture Yuji and hate him to this extent? Would he do the same to any other vessel? Is it because Yuji is capable of holding him in and he dislikes that? Or is it because Yuji represents everything he despises? Yuji carries on the burdens he picks up as he struggles, his and others. Meanwhile, Sukuna disregards them and looks away. Perhaps the escapism I mentioned earlier. Contrary to what the narrative implies, Sukuna is not enlightened. He ignores aspects of life and disregards them through embracing ones he excels at. So when he sees Yuji standing up on his feet time and time again, it disgusts him. Yuji is the exact opposite of Sukuna. Two sides of one coin, but one of the sides ignores the existence of the other since it cannot see it. Was his comment on Choso's inferiority and Yuji's incompetence in losing to him meant to show us that he has expectations and hopes for Yuji, like the ones he has for Megumi? Perhaps not. It's hard to tell at this point. Sukuna just observes for now, and so do we. Like I mentioned in the intro of the video, Sukuna is not someone we could understand if we examine him as a human, because he is not. He's more of an idea in this story, or a phenomena in the world. In-world characters are unable to understand him. Yuji and Gojo tried. He is a marvel, and not just in the world of sorcery or the world of Jujutsu, a threat to everything, but even narratively, since the whole story revolves around him. The first chapter is titled after him. The first major plot point and the last one revolve around him. This story is about him. Everyone else is just a piece in it for him to cut away. We're told he's a walking disaster, a force of nature that threatens the cycle of humanity and curses, but we've only seen him sparingly thus far, and strength-wise he's only at 3 fingers. So when he gains 75 of his strength, when he gets released that one cursed night and acts freely, people remember it as the Shibuya incident. Hanako and Mimiko bowed down as commanded. They felt the pressure so intense they started to question whether breathing is even permissible, for that is how it feels to be utterly powerless in his presence. Compared to them, Jogoat only gets on one knee and he gets punished for it. Sukuna kills the girls since they dared to offer him a deal that would make them look like they are equally trading something. How offensive and daring. And just like that, 2 souls deleted from existence. Again, Sukuna does not tolerate disrespect. He is okay with you trying to climb up towards him, for he only respects the strong that attempt it. But if you try to lower him down towards you, forget forgiveness. Remember that for later, for that is how you win against Sukuna. Jogoat has been struggling with a dilemma of his own. His pride was too high until his head was detached and stepped on by someone superior. He learned his place, but still thinks high enough of himself. High in Sukuna's eyes, at least. He challenges Jogoat, and we get to see the playful, unserious side again. Jogoat has his plans with his squad and all of the attempts to let Sukuna be in control to gain his favor. Sukuna pushes all of that to the side. He has his own plans. How pathetic. Curses flocking together, humans flocking together, compiling their strengths and uniting under weakness. Land one hit on me and I will do whatever you want. And of course that does not happen. For as strong as he is and as hard as Jogoat fights, Sukuna for the third time plays again with his prey as long as he is entertained. And while he is at it, when Jogoat uses his maximum technique, his most powerful attack, Sukuna finds other ways to make this even more fun for himself. Any human who moves before I say so will die. It's all a game for him, but at least Jogoat was strong enough to be the first person that Sukuna acknowledges. And another layer of the being that Sukuna is reveals itself. Jogo is not like Sukuna. He believes in companionship and is not on the path of strength that isolates you, makes you superior but alone. As proud and fiery as he was, Jogo lacked in the selfish department, just like Megumi. Mahito, on the other hand, was ready to undermine their plans because he personally wanted to kill Yuji for his own pleasure. He does not despise the humans like Jogo does. He cares enough to study their souls and understand their philosophy, all to utterly play with it for his own good. That is why Mahito ends up surpassing Jogoat. Jogoat is effectively the perfect balance of strength and weakness in Jujutsu Kaisen, from a literal and metaphorical point of view. He was so close yet so far away. Sukuna tells him he should have burnt everyone and everything in his way to reach his or Gojo's level. Sukuna, as cursed and cursing of others as he is, plays the role of an equalizer between humans and curses. A bodhisattva that guides others, but with a twist. He kills them after entertaining himself and completely destroying them, but if they are worth it, Sukuna is willing to point them in a direction that clarifies their dilemmas. How someone so absorbed in selfishness is capable of being this understanding and considerate through his actions and chaotic nature, mainly because Sukuna is not good-hearted in any type of way. He is pure evil. He does not pity Jogo or feels bad for him at all. He just praises him and gives him a peaceful send-off. It's just the way he sees things and believes in things, a truly cursed salvation. When Megumi is on the brink of death, Sukuna intervenes. To save Shiguro, he has to take down Mahoraga as an outsider to the ritual. We get a closer look at Sukuna's perceptiveness and intelligence in this fight. Sukuna is curious, and everything remotely new and interesting grabs his attention, deserving of an evaluation at least. He dissects things both literally and physically. He attempts to understand everything cursed energy related, break them down and conquer them if they fulfill him. And so, he does this to possibly the strongest Shikigami in the history of sorcery. A summon so powerful no one has ever been able to tame it, one that perhaps led to the death of someone just like Gojo a few hundred years ago. Mahoraga fulfills Sukuna's desires in every way, a strong opponent for him to fight while going all out, and a mysterious ability for him to dissect and negate. Mahoraga is the first to be able to see Sukuna's technique, the first to be able to survive it and counter it, almost adapted to it to the level it became irrelevant to him. A strong foe that Sukuna could throw everything at, knowing it will last long enough. And so, the artist brushes the world of the living with chaos and death. Everything is a canvas for him to express himself, a power so unimaginably overwhelming that it exceeds natural phenomena, a domain so potent it has no barriers, for it is the very world itself he is in. Other domains construct their physical space and disappear after they're done. Meanwhile, Sukuna's stays because it is the world. Cut everything and everyone, burn them all. In ashen rubbles he bows down. A domain is an expression of the soul, a manifestation of one's inner world and beliefs, and this is his, open for everyone to see.
小僧、せいぜい噛みしめろ。
KyeZzzz.
The vessel shatters, broken even further after shattering by its own mirror. Mahito is the purest curse in Jujutsu Kaisen, the antithesis to the humanity that Yuji embodies. The curse that came from humanity itself is the one that taught its ambassador his flawed nature and weaknesses, and the one that led him to overcoming them. Mahito is the fastest learner in the series and the character with the most progression we see. He goes from being too stunned to move after feeling Sukuna's presence to challenging him, standing on an equal level with him arrogantly. However, Mahito did not attempt to lower Sukuna to his level. He climbed his way up. And like I mentioned, Sukuna is okay with that. I see this silent reaction more as being impressed at Mahito's bravery and progress from the last time he met him. Mahito is KyeZzzz, Yuji is humanity, and Sukuna is the one that stands in between both worlds, the equalizer and judge. The vessel pieces itself back together with outside aid that it trusts and believes in, using losses as glue to help instead of extra weight to break under. And so the human continues to move forward, accepting his role in the endless cycle and vowing to do what he should do. And even as he breaks again, Sukuna observes in disappointment and disgust. Yuji picks himself up, renews his view, and continues to move forward. When Yuji faces Higuruma and is unfairly judged, he takes the blame for Sukuna's rampage and the destruction he caused in Shibuya. The look that shocked and recontextualized Higuruma's entire belief in justice. His biggest decision in the manga so far, from a thematic point of view. What led Hiromi to let him win and give him the points is none other than his purity and foolishness, and the way he embraces both of them as his flaws and his strength. Why did you take the blame? Because of my weakness. But when the hour comes, everything flips upside down for Megumi and Yuji. Yorozu ruins everything and Sukuna finally acts. Unchain. He swaps to Megumi's body, a vessel that can hold him but not one that is in control like Yuji. He smiles and stares at Yuji before punching him so hard off the building, tricking Angel who is here to kill him, attacking Maki and Takaba through an overwhelmingly more powerful version of Megumi's power. Everything was going so well, too good to be true. Even Megumi commented on this. If only he knew what awaited him. Yuji stands there, processing, cursing whatever is happening. His constant moving forward halts in this moment, and for that silent instant, he just stares. He climbs his way back up, and finally Yuji and Sukuna fight. A confrontation of the two sides, both physical and mental. Sukuna is weakened because Megumi is fighting from within, holding back his output. Yuji asks a question he asked Mahito before. Why do all this? Why make others suffer? And parallelly to Mahito's reply that this is his nature, just like Yuji protects and saves, just like he kills KyeZzzz while wearing a stupid made-up philosophy acquired by his human reasoning, he, the curse, acts according to his instincts, just like he is supposed to. And just like Yuji ended up agreeing with Mahito that he is him, Sukuna tells Yuji something he also agrees on, his very weakness being the reason he gets trampled on. What they don't agree on, however, is how the weak are to be treated. And Yuji remembers again when he first realized the truth, a truth he already knows. He was still looking for the good, even in them. He was still expecting what he wanted to believe in instead of the truth he already learned. These are curses. This panel of Yuji's moving forward through Sukuna's endless attacks tells us everything we need to know about Yuji's character arc. When Yuji time and time again opens his mind expecting reason, he meets reality, and so he focuses on growth to be able to act against that reality. And this punch is Yuji's answer, the one he climbs up and moves toward no matter the odds. With this many layers to this one act, the amount of parallels, callbacks, foreshadowing, even Sukuna realizes something. Yuji's true nature and his origin, his abnormality. Curse you, Kenjaku, for how vile and disgusting you are. The human that traded his humanity for knowledge and progress. If Yuji's progression and evolution, the curse-infused man of tomorrow, the womb that shall be birthed and reach enlightenment, then the parent is proud, or the inventor is happy with the results, or perhaps both. Maki helps Yuji fight Sukuna, and Sukuna is impressed by her. A new idea on his radar, discarding cursed energy in its entirety, is something opposite to him, an unknown territory, and he is intrigued. Someone deserving of respect. When Ryomen joins and he gets away, they look at Yuji's face and mock him. Nothing new, but the painful look in his eyes, the losses that keep compiling on his back, are too much for him to bear, yet he still stands. Yorozu is mistaken in thinking Sukuna longs for companionship and love, another human who thinks he is like her, human needs and desires, and sadly confined because of his loneliness and strength at the top. Much like Gojo also will, they fundamentally misunderstand Sukuna. While they stare at and appreciate the flower, he sees the whole garden in its detail, understanding them more than they understand themselves. I call Sukuna the equalizer because he understands curses, smiles at Mahito's growth on the right track, shows that right track to Jogo and praises him. He understands the curses that explore themselves, just as he does understand humans who think he lacks clarity. Yorozu attempts to deliver him peace through death, but fails, and she dies as the offering she is, a tool for him to progress, sinking Megami's soul deeper into darkness, killing his sister with his own hands and his own power. Love is nothing more than a metaphor that Yorozu uses to explain the concept through her understanding, just like Hakari uses the word fever for the idea he follows. And these human needs are something Sukuna shredded a long time ago, once he understands better than they ever could. And the bath ritual Sukuna does only shows us that. Cursed energy comes from negative thoughts, and those come from the body and are made by the brain. A level of impurity and clarity is needed to achieve enlightenment. We know this. It's what Mahito seeks through embracing his instincts. It's what Gojo tastes when he ascends. It is the very enlightenment itself in this context. And it's what Kenjaku wants to plunge the entire world of sorcery into through the culling game. And he does. Sorcerers surpass their limits and grow. Some achieve levels of attaining enlightenment, whatever that means to them. In the same location that Maki awakens in, Ryomen prepares the bath for Sukuna. And there are a multitude of hidden meanings and Buddhism references, and the layers of lore in the Japanese context, visual cues, and much more about the impurity and bath and enlightenment that I won't be covering. Much like many other things hidden throughout the narrative that I have been skipping, that would make this video at least 3 hours if I attempt to, aside from breaking down kanji to extract meaning like I did in the domain expansions video. Gege Akutami is a very good and prolific author when it comes to these things, and I keep finding deeper levels and secrets all the time, and so does the community. So instead, I will link a brilliant post made by user AlanJJK that dives deep into just the bath and its symbolism. Meanwhile, I will focus on the thematic layer. Kegare, or impurity and decay, is a very prominent storytelling theme that the Japanese are very fascinated by and many stories tackle. And Jujutsu Kaisen's very Juryoku, cursed energy, is that very impurity that is also used by sorcerers. Just like Yuji has to shake himself awake and use the cursed energy to his favor, a repeating cycle of purification and awakening is necessary to excel while carrying the impure power that Juryoku fundamentally is, for it is cursed after all. We see characters plunged into and soaked in things as they are undergoing transformations, whether they are physical or mental, and the biggest of them all is Sukuna's, to completely take over Megami's body and realize himself. These are the eyes of someone who deeply understands humanity and chooses to push it down, bury it, literally and metaphorically, unlike Yuji, who embraces it with its flaws. So when the strongest human, one truly confined by his strength, one tormented by loneliness, one with infinite expectations and used as the ultimate weapon of humanity, faces Sukuna, the inevitable fight, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, the strongest sorcerer of today versus the strongest sorcerer in history. Gojo Satoru, as grand and important as he is in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, is not a direct foil for Sukuna. They are narratively opposed and contrasted. They are the two beacons of strength in the universe of Jujutsu Kaisen that ended up clashing. But they're not rivals or even thematic counterparts, at least nowhere as close to Yuji versus Sukuna. Gojo is alone even in that, for he is humanity's ultimate tool, used and reused as befitting of a weapon. However, whereas Yuji is learning to accept that he is nothing but a cog in a system, Gojo already accepted his role and adhered to it. What Gojo represents against Sukuna's philosophy is yet another person that accepted his humanity and accepted the cycle that Sukuna broke out of. When Sukuna says Gojo is just another human who is stronger than the rest, but nothing but an obstacle for him, he is sadly right. The outcome of that battle proves it. Gojo is a tricky opponent, but was still dissected by Sukuna, who countered his most powerful ability. For if Gojo did not have the Limitless, this would not even be a fight. Sukuna has won the fight since episode 5, ever since Megami showed him a way. When he saved Megami, understood Maharaga's ability, tamed him and took it for himself, made Maharaga adapt to the Limitless so that he reinvents his ability, makes it work against Gojo through a complex set of binding vows. Sukuna is efficient and smart. He never stays the same. He stayed in Megami's body, which is much weaker than his original form, played defensively until he got his checkmate. Even though he is the strongest in the story, he still progresses and grows as a sorcerer. Meanwhile, Gojo, as strong as he was, reached the limit of his limitlessness long ago. Sukuna could have also won if he did not have Maharaga, but he went with a more guaranteed and a trickier plan. He won the battle. However, Gojo won the long game. For just as Sukuna has been planning and preparing to take down Gojo, Gojo's been working on his own path and vision that ended up succeeding. Gojo became a teacher so that he raises a strong and brilliant group of allies that defies the cycle of modern sorcery, headed by traditionalists that only care about upholding their power. He saved Yuta, Yuji, Megumi, and even Maki from fates written by those very traditions. He accepted and guided others under his wing. For as bad as a teacher as he was, he did his best. For as much as he suffered and failed in accomplishing his goals and duty, he persevered, remained on the right track, and protected his little group until it sprouted. And it is that very group that took down Sukuna through their relentless effort, the very effort that Gojo spearheaded and started himself. Gojo won the war as one of the best leaders ever possible, one that fought and died smiling, giving hope and confidence to those that followed. Sukuna broke out of the cycle. Meanwhile, Gojo embraced it and changed its very mechanisms and remained a part of it, a part that did its part of the job and died with no regrets. Now, I have been saying cycle this and cycle that for the longest, but just what exactly even is that? Jujutsu Kaisen's story does not just use the word Kag as a symbol for sorcerers, but all within the narrative are metaphors of that nature, representing various ideas and character roles through a repeating cycle. Curse energy and cursed spirits are in of themselves cyclical. Curses are reborn after they die because their fears remain and cause their birth again eventually. Cycling energy within the body and using it is how you use it for your own. Fate itself repeats instances of rebirth that alter the reality of sorcery. The Limitless and Six Eyes users over history, the Star Plasma Vessels and Tengen's rebirth. Toji was the first to break the repeating cycle and allowed Kenjaku to play his cards right. Kenjaku's relentless trial and error through all of these cycles of birth and rebirth as the creator who is trying to change everything through new things. His opposite and opponent, Tengen the Preserver, who upholds the cycle and ensures it remains the same, guarding and preserving Jujutsu sorcery that counters the endless cycle of curses. Those two cycles, that of sorcery and that of curses, that Sukuna broke through 1,000 years ago, and 1,000 years later, he is still the destroyer, rebirthed again to play his role. Just like curses come back eventually, Sukuna also comes back, and just like he was defeated by the efforts of sorcerers in the Heian era, he was defeated by the modern sorcerers, and he might as well just come back again. His fate is even worse than curses and humans both, for he went above them, but breaking out of the cycles only got him in a new one, his own cycle. I went over birth and rebirth more in the domain expansions video, so I won't be discussing that here, but it is also another piece in the very cycle. Jujutsu Kaisen as a name, when broken down and interpreted properly, goes something like the eternal battle against sorcery towards enlightenment, the very cycle of Jujutsu itself. Some stay stuck in it, some try to break out of it, some try to replace it, some try to ruin it, some change it from within, some accept their roles, and some are crushed by it. A sorcerer's efforts are never in vain so long his comrades continue fighting, and that's what followed Gojo's death. Kashimo went all out to quench his personal thirst and extract meaning from the strongest, a meaning he did not necessarily agree with, for Sukuna's cursed form of salvation is logical and natural, but no one accepts it. Jogo said you are probably right, but never agreed. Yorozu was more shocked in his understanding of everything, but never agreed with his rejection of everything. And Gojo failed to reach him, but Sukuna did not bother telling him anything since Gojo embraced his imperfection and died with no regrets, accomplishing his role. Sukuna's philosophy is wrong and did not help anyone, not even himself. So he continues to fight, expressing interest and intrigue in those deserving, and battling endlessly. Endless thirst for fighting and chaos. The massive force versus the endless one. Two cycles of enlightenment clashing against one another. Yuji fights the longest and hardest. He keeps coming back time and time again, for that is what humanity has been doing for the longest. Gojo leading and starting the cycle. Hajime Kashimo, Hiromi Hikuruma, Itadori Yuji and Choso Kamo, Okotsu Yuta, Orimoto Rika, Maki Zennin, Miguel and Laru, Kusakabe and Ino, Meme, Kirara and Uibi, Hakari Kinji, Hanakurusu and Angel, Shokoyeri, Panda, Imai Rin, Fushiguro Megumi, Kugisaki Nobara, and Aoi Todo. All cogs doing their work as expected. Itadori Yuji, humanity's ambassador with all of its flaws and weaknesses, the vessel that carried Sukuna for most of the story, the vessel that carried its own naive and flimsy ideals, has grown so much after all the shattering it endured, and even as it gets broken throughout this very fight, he never stops. If it's just pain, Itadori Yuji will not stop. That is a very quote from the manga itself. His domain counters Sukuna's malevolence with benevolence, his fire with his ice. Yuji feels pity towards Sukuna. He feels sad for him. Even after everything he did to him, after everything, Yuji climbed half the way up to Sukuna and lowered him down the other half towards him. Sukuna lost when he was weakened by everyone, and Yuji pitied him and lowered him to his level, the thing he hates the most, for he is the fallen. And yet again, Yuji still finds it in his heart to offer his hand and accept Sukuna. And of course, if cycles are anything to go by, Sukuna rejects him. When Yuji wins after everyone's efforts, finding meaning in his cursed life through birth and rebirth, literally by the way, Kenjaku's will, every death on his back, and the very same mindset since the start, only he is strong enough to carry it now. Sukuna lost in more than one way. And props to him, he admitted it. He refused Yuji's offer and died as a curse instead of a human. He meets Mahito and admits his loss. He chose his path. Yuji chose the other path. Perhaps, had he chosen this one, it would have been better. Gojo died with no regrets, meanwhile Sukuna died with one. But at least he is not Mahito, who was stuck in that cycle of curses, an empty void devoid of meaning. And so the king of curses falls from his throne again, his shrine like he once did, still refusing everything, the cycle, the natural laws of the living, and even death itself. But he admitted defeat, his wrong choice, and maybe in the next time he will change his ways. Many thanks for watching.